Welcome to the Warning Track Power Hour. I'm Andrew Scaff. He's Mike Orman. Today we're going to recap the NFL's Week 13 action, update our betting competition. We'll also talk a little bit about some free agent signings and in baseball. We'll update on the World Cup and a little bit about the CFP, College Football Playoff. Then we'll talk about Week 14 action too in the NFL.
14.
We'll start where we have been starting the last several weeks with the most interesting stories from Week 13 in the NFL. What did you find most intriguing from Week 13? Was it scoring 5 touchdowns in a quarter from Dallas? Winning a game with no offensive touchdowns for Cleveland? Scoring a decent point total, 27 points with no offensive touchdowns.
Yeah, only 2 field goals.
I'm gonna assume it's not the Chiefs losing a pretty awful to watch game against Cincinnati.
Yeah, that was
or something
painful.
else entirely. What was most interesting from Week 13?
I think most interesting to me was maybe quarterback injuries. Since we had both Lamar Jackson and Jimmy Garoppolo going out for competitive playoff teams, and then both teams won with their backup quarterbacks, whether it was Tyler Huntley or Brock Purdy.
Mr. Irrelevant.
And I guess we also had, because of quarterback injuries, the Rams signed Baker Mayfield today or yesterday. Mm-hmm. Mayfield got released from Carolina. So I think the quarterbacking has been interesting. And Mike White's still playing in place of Zach Wilson.
Didn't have necessarily a great game,
but he threw for almost 400 yards. He
brought the team back. Yeah,
he kept the team in it. My only victory, a betting victory. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But I guess it's quarterbacking has been interesting this past week. The Chiefs lost very well, and I don't think the Chiefs match the Bengals intensity a lot of the time. And I think they've been out coached a lot too. And whether it was the last 2 times the Chiefs played the Bengals, they were outclassed in the second half because something with the offense, Reed and Bieniemy not making adjustments, or maybe failing to try to blow the teams out when they could. And then this time it seemed like they came out flat, and then they were ahead, and then they kind of ended the game flat again. So the fourth quarter wasn't very good. The first quarter wasn't very good. The middle was okay. I don't want to talk about but the interesting to me, I think was the continued quarterback injuries, and I think maybe the star-crossed season of Jimmy Garoppolo, who might be out for the rest of the season, although I heard today that he could possibly return during the playoffs. What struck you about this week?
I think it actually is the San Francisco 49ers. I think that's probably the most interesting story from the group, was that Garoppolo went down. They still won a big game against top 5 AFC team, at least anyway.
Yeah, they won handily.
Fairly handily, yeah. And it wasn't too bad with a Mr. Irrelevant. So maybe this is an entirely different quarterback controversy than we've talked about basically all year long with San Francisco. What are they going to do with Garoppolo? Is Lance good enough? Now it's maybe Garoppolo likely won't be with the team next year. It kind of ends that controversy, I think. But now maybe there's a controversy between Purdy and Lance. If Purdy finishes the season well, is there a different controversy now too? It's that's a really intriguing story, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's Purdy. He played all right. He had he 210 yards passing, because and he basically played almost the entire game because Garoppolo went out early,
First possession,
and
yeah.
and they had a good offense, both running and passing with him.
Mm-hmm.
His stat line looked pretty similar to what we see out of Garoppolo.
Right.
210 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, QB rating of 88.8, pretty good.
Yeah, solid.
Yeah, he outplayed Tua.
Yeah.
McCaffrey had a big game, rushing and receiving.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, yeah, it seems like,
but that's with him, not practicing with the first team though, too. So with Purdy wouldn't get first team snaps in practice leading up to the game. So it's really not bad for
someone being pressed into it. Yeah.
He's going to be running at the last minute. Yeah.
He played relatively well against the Chiefs in the mop-up duty. He ended up throwing an interception in the end zone, but he moved the ball. He moved the team down the field pretty well. Yeah, and I think there might be a controversy if we say that Purdy leads them into the playoffs. I think they're gonna
barely, away, not far from clinching a playoff spot.
I would say they just if they win 2 games, they're in. They're 8-4 right now. They have, we might say, a relatively. They don't have any easy teams on the schedule at the end. So they play home against the Buccaneers, who are leading their division. They won last week, but haven't looked so great. At Seattle, home against the Commanders, who are fighting for the playoffs as well. At the Raiders, who may actually be fighting for a playoff spot. They're only 2 games out right now. I think they probably have to win out to make it, but who knows? If we talked about last week, if they play the Chiefs the last week of the season, we thought, well, if the Chiefs had won out, maybe they would be sitting pretty for the 1 seed, and then maybe they wouldn't play their best players against the Raiders, and the Raiders might get it. But maybe we would say, well, maybe the Chiefs are locked in if they aren't in the battle for the 1 seed, like let's say Buffalo wins all their games.
Yeah.
They're locked
out of the 1 seed.
They're locked out of the 1. They're locked into the 2. Maybe they wouldn't play, but
still possible.
I think that's possible, but I don't know. Then home against the Cardinals, which is probably the easiest game, and the Cardinals aren't terrible, but by that point, maybe they won't care.
Right.
So I would say it's not a super easy schedule, but it's a doable schedule. They don't have like any juggernaut that they're playing.
Yeah.
So I could see anywhere between.
But it'll really come down to how they do in that game against Seattle, right? So if they win that game, they're basically in, right?
Yeah, I could see them anywhere between 2 and 3 over the last 5 to 4-1 or 5-0. Who knows? But yeah, then it might become a question. Well, once you get to the playoffs, do they keep Purdy in, or do you bring Garoppolo
if he's healthy?
Who's healthy? And that's another potential controversy down the line. If Purdy plays well, what do you do with Garoppolo?
For this season, yeah.
For this season, if he is healthy by the time, like let's say the 49ers win their wild card playoff game and Garoppolo's good for the divisional, what do you do? Do you put him in? It's a little bit like what was the controversy that was developing with the Chiefs many years ago when Rich Gannon and Elvis Grbac were fighting over it, and Gannon had been the hot hand, but then he got hurt, so Grbac went back in and stayed the quarterback, even though Gannon came back.
Was maybe the better.
And then Gannon went out. I don't think Garoppolo's as good as. Well, he might be as good as what we thought Gannon was. So yeah, but yeah, like you said, it's potentially a 3-way quarterback controversy because they still have Lance, but Lance was a higher draft pick than Purdy. But you could argue, well, Purdy played for Iowa State, a Power 5 school. He had much more experience in college than Lance did. I guess he doesn't have the running dimension to his game in the way that Lance does, but he's
Purdy ran a bit in college, but not a whole
Yeah,
lot.
I'm looking at his college stats. Yeah, he ran for about looks like a little over 300 yards a year. He had
Yeah,
several rushing touchdowns per year.
he ran
But
kind of just like when he needed to, but it wasn't like a run. It wasn't much of an option type guy. He would take it when it was available to him, but he wasn't looking for it like the typical like running college quarterback anyway.
so let's look at the tail of the tape here. I have uh, Purdy's stats versus Lance's stats. So Purdy started 8 games as a freshman. So
Yep.
he became the starting quarterback by season's end. He had a college quarterback rating is a little bit different from pro rating, but he had 169.9 rating. He has 16 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 2,250 yards. And then he had almost 4,000 yards as a sophomore, which is probably his best year. 27 touchdowns, 9 picks, and then solid 19-9, 19-8, and about 3,000 yards each in junior and senior years, with quarterback ratings of at least 142 each of those seasons.
But that junior year, they were just outside the college football playoff position,
Yeah,
going into the conference championship.
they finished number 9 in the poll. They were 9-3.
Yeah.
They only lost 1 game in the Big 12.
So I think yeah, when they got to the Big 12 championship game, I think they were ranked 6th. And so going into that game, there's an outside chance 3 and 4 both lose. Iowa State wins big in the college football in the conference championship, and there's a slim chance that they could sneak in. Yeah.
Yeah, you were right. They were number 6. They lost 27-21 to number 10 Oklahoma, and
they got cheated by the officials in the repeatedly. It was awful. It's a recurring theme that the Big 12 has. They don't just not put their thumb on the scale for the team that has a chance to get into the college football championship. The refs actually like take away whatever chance they had at being a dominant team in those games too. It's awful. Cheated.
That was also the year where they lost their first. This was the COVID year.
Yeah,
that was the year they lost their opening game to Louisiana. Like it's Louisiana. It used to be Louisiana Lafayette.
Yeah. Who ended up being pretty good that season. I think they ended up being ranked for a lot of that season. I don't know if they finished ranked, but they were ranked during that.
They ended up finishing 15th or 16th, depending on what
hole. They were like an unknown team, and they managed to
yeah. So they had a good team.
Yeah,
they had a good team. But it was an unexpected loss for sure. Then they won 3 in a row, then lost barely to Oklahoma State, then rattled off a series of victories until the Oklahoma game, then beat Oregon in a bowl. So they had a solid season. It reminds you a little bit of K-State's season this year, where K-State lost at home to Tulane, another non-Power 5 school, but also ended up making the Big 12 championship and actually won the Big 12 championship this year. You might say, again, maybe because of iffy officiating, but
it's a theme.
But yeah, I was talking about Brock Purdy's quarterback stats.
Yeah, so how does Lance compare to the?
Well, Lance has really only 1 season as a starter. He did not start in 2018. He was redshirted. The quarterback for that team was Easton Stick. You might remember him as Chargers backup, right? 5th round backup. So he was the backup to Easton Stick. That was a year that the Bison went undefeated and won the national championship over James Madison. That was in 20.
Is that D2? Is that what that is?
Division 1 FCS football. Yeah.
Okay.
In 2019, North Dakota State also went undefeated, #1 all the way through. They were the first college football team to finish the season 16-0 since Yale in 1894, back when Yale would win many national championships. Do you know the 1894 Yale team? What do you think the average number of points that Yale allowed per game in 1894? They were 16-0.
I'll say not very many. I'll say 1 touchdown per game, 7 points a game.
Lower. You would have to be. They played 16 games. They only allowed 13 total points.
So less than 1 point per game. Wow.
And it looks like most of those points that were allowed were safeties.
Yes.
They shut out 13 of 16 opponents.
Yeah.
Their fourth game, they won. The only games that they allowed points was against Williams, where they beat Williams 23-4. So I assume that was 2 safeties by Williams. They beat Army, the closest game all year, 12-5. So I'm guessing Army had a field goal and a safety. And then they beat Harvard 12-4.
Wow.
And so I'm assuming 2 more safeties. So it seems like maybe the only offensive points they allowed
single field goal
was a single field goal. I assume that's I guess scoring could have been different back then in 1884.
Yeah.
But they themselves outscored opponents 485-13 on the season.
Wow. It's domination.
Yeah. So that was Yale's 1894 team.
Wow.
And one of their best players was Bill Hickok, Wild Bill Hickok III, who I don't know if he was related.
Actual relation or from that?
I don't think he wasn't related to that Bill Hickok. Maybe distantly.
Wild Bill Hickok,
but he was not. But he was named Wild Bill, of course.
Yeah.
But
naturally.
And yeah, so
how do Lance and Purdy's NFL stats line up? Are they?
We haven't talked about Lance's college stats yet.
Yeah.
So one year was very, very good.
Yeah.
He finished with 2,700 yards passing, so a little less than 200 yards per game, but he had a 28-0 touchdown interception ratio. He also rushed for 1,100 yards with 14 touchdowns. So really, really good, but against not that strong of competition. He also played a full 16 games, which is really a regular season.
Yeah.
The touchdown interception ratio would be really good, but then he played only 1 game in 2020 during the COVID year. He had 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. He rushed for 2 more touchdowns, 143 yards. So he had a pretty good game, but he didn't have that much competition. He played in the FCS. He only had that 1 really good year, but it was a really good year. He's tall. He's 6'4", 224 pounds. Purdy is 6'1", so he's a little shorter.
Yeah.
Doesn't have the running ability. So I guess physically you think of Lance as being a better prospect, but I don't know if he's a better passer. He wasn't asked to pass as much, and a lot of that passing yardage from Lance probably came because he was able to run the ball. It was a little bit like Lamar. It was a little, like having Lamar Jackson out there. Bigger Lamar Jackson. So I guess that's what they want, a bigger Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's going to happen. Lamar Jackson played against much. He played Louisville. He won a Heisman Trophy. He played much harder competition than
Yeah.
Lance did. So yeah, what do you want to look at the pro stats? Do you have the pro stats?
I do have him up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's thrown for more yards this season? You think Purdy or Lance?
Well,
Lance got injured in his second
Lance
game.
got injured in his second game. Purdy has only been in 2 games, probably. I'd say Purdy has.
He's appeared in 4 games. Really, he may have just done kneel downs in some other games or something. But
I'd say Purdy has more yards because I think the only game Lance was in that crazy, windy, rainy game against Chicago at Chicago.
Yeah.
Opening. So I would say Purdy has more yards.
Purdy does have 82 more passing yards this season. But Purdy has thrown 2 touchdown passes. Lance has not thrown one yet. So yeah, rating wise, Purdy 76, Trey Lance 55 this season.
Okay.
Purdy has thrown 2 picks. Lance has only thrown 1.
Yeah. I guess you think of Lance. I guess Lance was drafted for his upside. Purdy probably was a safer pick. You think he's probably seen as a career backup. But
Yeah.
Who knows? Yeah, I still think even if
it's going to come down to like, yeah, Purdy manages to take him to the playoffs and take him deep into the playoffs, then it will create this whole other controversy that, wasn't there a week ago, right?
Yeah, I think it's almost like the Nick Foles, Carson Wentz situation. But you have a rookie instead of a veteran in Purdy. And
but like a week ago, the controversy was if Garoppolo takes the team deep into the playoffs, will they have to consider keeping him around long term, maybe even trading Lance, because he would have taken him deep into the playoffs this year, right? So now it's, well, Garoppolo's injured, so he's probably done in San Francisco. I would think they were trying to get rid of him last year. Now they have a reason to get rid of him. He's missed the end of the season.
Yeah.
If he doesn't come back.
Yeah.
And then the whole controversy becomes, well, what if Purdy takes them deep into the playoffs? Now maybe he is a guy they need to consider as a starting quarterback if he actually, leads the team well at the end of this season. So it's just interesting. It's an interesting problem to have where, you have more than one person who's capable of doing the job. And whichever way you pick, you're still probably going to be relatively successful because you don't rely on that position. You already have a great running back. You've got a great defense. You've got some good wide receivers too. Like, you don't really need the quarterback to be like one of the top 5 in the league. You just have to
that's one of the things that Shanahan has kind of wanted. He doesn't need a great quarterback. He just needs a kind of steady one. But I guess he thought maybe Lance could be a great one. But yeah, that's an interesting issue. I see if Purdy does well, I think, and Lance comes back and seems healthy, I would say the 49ers would want to trade Purdy because they wouldn't want to like mess with Lance's head.
That makes sense.
And think they could get maybe a decent draft pick for Purdy, who's proven that he can be a solid NFL quarterback, if that's what happens. Yeah, it's an interesting issue. Because I guess they could. You wouldn't see them. I guess if they traded Lance, they'd just get pennies on the dollar for him.
For an injured first round pick that hasn't performed.
Yeah, and Purdy, Purdy might just be a flash in the pan, but you could maybe at his all-time highest value, you could maybe get a 4th round pick for him or something.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if he takes him to like an NFC Championship game.
Yeah, you spend a 7th round pick.
Maybe you get a 2nd or 3rd round pick for him, right?
Yeah, who knows? Yeah, who knows? Maybe there's I think but I would say if Purdy has a future, long-term future, I don't know if it's with San Francisco. I don't know if it's with San Francisco. It's kind of like Garoppolo. I don't think it's. I think they've invested too much in Lance.
Yeah.
And even if Lance doesn't turn out to be that great, I still think they think, well, the 49ers are going to be okay anyway because they've been okay.
Yeah.
And even if Lance, like I think they could at least see Lance as like a Jalen Hurts type, who's not as good maybe as some of the other young quarterbacks around, but he's steady enough, and he has, he's a decent passer, but he's a very good runner. I think, and the Eagles have done really well with Hurts. Maybe I'm underselling Jalen Hurts, but he's
He's having a pretty decent season. They are
yeah,
what, 11-1, so
yeah, he's having a good season because the team is doing so well. Their defense is so good,
right.
and also he's leading a team that can run the ball very, very well. So so they
Yeah.
have it's making the pass is very easy because
Right.
he's been putting very good opportunities. I don't think you stick him in the Chiefs offense, or something like that, or swap Mahomes with Hurts. I think you see the Eagles are 12-0, and the Chiefs are probably 5-7, something like that, probably, because I don't think he can make the throws, and they don't have the personnel
Yeah.
that can help him thrive. They don't have the running backs. They don't have the.
Yeah.
Um,
He fits
I don't
well
think.
into the system they have.
Yeah, they developed a system. So
Although the Eagles, we wondered if they were actually as good as their record was, but they had a dominant win this week. 35-10 win over
over the
Tennessee.
Titans, yeah, the Titans have kind of faded after their strong. They had a sputtering start, and they had a strong middle part of the season. Now
Mm.
they're sputtering again. They don't have the um, big play ability. Their best wide receiver, Traylon Burks, first round draft pick, I think got hurt again against the Eagles, if I'm right.
Well, they're just so reliant on the run.
Yeah, and
If
if
they
you can
get
stop
behind,
Henry,
it's going to be a long day because they don't really have the personnel to
yeah.
catch up, get into
Burks
a rebound.
had a great touchdown catch against the Eagles, but then he probably got a concussion,
Mm.
helmet to helmet hit. So yeah, it's um, so yeah. I think the Titans are very one dimensional. I think partly the Titans kind of are the Eagles, but the Eagles have AJ Brown this year, and the Titans had him last year.
Right.
So having AJ Brown there makes he's one of the top 5 receivers in the league. Maybe you
Yeah.
have Tyreek, uh, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase.
Debo, maybe? Or somebody they just NFC
The
or
league. I don't think
NFL.
Debo hasn't
Okay.
been used
Yeah.
that much this year. Maybe
Yeah.
Stephon Diggs. Maybe.
Diggs, yeah.
I think that would be. Well, you might say Waddle even.
Yeah.
um, yeah, McLaurin for Washington's pretty good for having no quarterback.
Right. Well, yeah,
Yeah,
like DK Metcalf and Tyler
Metcalf
Lockett
and Lockett are
or
pretty good.
or maybe not top five, but
No, yeah,
they're,
yeah. I guess you might say
somewhere
maybe
there.
the Chargers have some pretty good receivers, but I don't know if they're top 5
Yeah.
either. But
Yeah.
yeah, the Titans just they don't have a threat to pass right now.
Devontae
Okay.
Adams and
Oh, Devontae Adams, yeah, I
Raiders.
forgot about him. Yeah,
Yeah. Mike Evans, Tampa.
I
You
think
think
Evans
he's
has
good
been
Mike Evans?
hurt too much,
Yeah.
and he's probably on the older side.
What did you think about the tie? What are your thoughts on tie games in the NFL?
I
Should they go to a shootout like World Cup international soccer games? Some kind of shootout instead of just ending in a tie?
I think if it's a regular season game, it doesn't matter. I
Yeah.
think it's a little like the World Cup group stage. Having a tie, it's not the biggest deal because it's you have
It
multiple
counts for
games.
your record, but it doesn't hurt as much as a loss.
Yeah, you have
But
multiple
it
games.
doesn't help as much as a
But
win.
I think if the NFL ended playoff games, with a field goal kicking competition after, a few minutes of overtime didn't settle anything, that would be terrible.
Would there be a civil war then if that were the new
couldn't
rule?
do that. I don't know. It somehow fits this European sense of drama and theater that the FIFA, the World Cup rules, that to like some international fans, it makes sense within soccer for some reason. I don't think it makes any sense. I guess it's dramatic, but it doesn't. If you're the goal is to have the best team win or the better team win, I don't think it does that. It just kind of random, and there's psychological torment, I guess, in it. But like, is that what you
more or less just forces a conclusion? That's really
somebody has to win.
Yeah,
and I think I would rather have.
Do we need that in the NFL in a regular season game?
No, I don't think we do. I think ties are rare enough, and then I think they're funny enough that they kind of screw up the playoffs, and a team that ties sometimes gets in or doesn't get in the playoffs because of that tie. Like the Steelers got in last year because they had that tie.
But shouldn't they just play the whole 15-minute period though? Why do they play a shorter?
I don't like the 10. I don't like the 10. I think 15 makes more sense because
that's what I don't understand.
I think 10 minutes leads to more ties because you have a shorter.
Right. And I think there's already been more. Haven't there been more ties this season than there were last? Was there one tie last season?
They've had the 10-minute overtime for.
It's just been 2-3 years. It hasn't been very long.
2017 was when they shortened overtime to 10 minutes.
Wasn't that long ago? Wow. So let's see. Last year. So there's been 2 ties this year, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't have that up here.
Okay, so tied games. There have been 7 ties from 2017 to 2022. So that's in 6 seasons. There have been 7.
There was one tie last year.
There were none in 2017, 2 in 2018, 1 each year, 2019 through 21, and then 2 this year.
Yeah.
In they introduced the modified sudden death system in 2012, where the team it used to be the team that scored first would win, whether it was a field goal. Then in 2012 they said we had to have a touchdown to win it outright. And so from 2012 to 2016 there were 5 ties, so 1 tie per year on average, 2 in 2016. But before that, from 1974 through 2011, there were only 17 ties. There were 494 overtime games, 17 ties.
Because I don't remember them happening very often, if at all.
I remember the Chiefs tied a game. I think it was Marty Schottenheimer's first year as coach.
So like 1990.
I think they tied the Cleveland Browns, 1989.
89, yeah.
Oh, the Chiefs had 2 ties 2 years in a row. 1988, they tied the Jets, 17-17. That was, I think, during one of Frank Gans's terrible seasons. They finished like 4-11-1 or something. And then 1989, they tied the Browns, and they finished 8-7-1 that year, just outside the playoffs. But it was 10-10. I think Nick Lowry missed a bunch of field goals. So they didn't have there was, for example, the Chiefs tied in 1989. There weren't any ties until 1997. NFL went 8 years without a tie. And then they had 2 in 97.
Yeah.
One in 2002, 1 in 2008. And then once it went to the modified system, they had about 1 a year. And so they've still had about 1 a year, a little more than 1 a year.
Yeah.
Since the 10-minute period.
The re-modified? Re-modified?
So over 30, before the modified, they had about 0.5 ties per year from 1974 to 2011, 37 years, 17 ties, and then about 1 since the modified rules. So they've actually made it
They've
more
increased
like
the number of ties. Yeah.
right. Maybe you say the outcome is more fair because it's not just a field goal, to win it.
You don't play for a field goal anyway. On the first one.
But I think the 15. I like the modified with the 15 better than the 10-minute. I don't like the 10-minute.
Or do you like the college rule where they like line up the 25, they start a drive there, the other team gets to go from the other 25?
I think the college game overtimes have improved because they don't get it's just a series of 2-point conversions after a while now.
Yeah, third overtime, I think they have to go 2-point conversions. But sometimes they still go pretty deep into the overtimes. Like I think that was supposed to force the overtimes to end faster, right? But it doesn't always. But would you rather see that in the NFL than see a tie in the NFL?
No, I don't mind ties in the regular season that much.
No. Well, you can't tie in playoffs, so they keep playing overtime periods until somebody wins. Right? In the NFL? Yeah. And then, but so this recent tie from this most recent week does have potentially a pretty major effect on playoff race because there was a division game against two teams that are contending for division and wild card spots, right? With Washington and the New York Giants.
I guess the just thing to happen would be that the Giants and Commanders tie again in
next week,
Washington, and then that would be like each team won one time.
Right.
So the records would be a win. It would be 2 ties would be as good as a win and a loss.
Yeah.
So then you could say then I think it wouldn't affect the standings as much. So if we could get them to tie again, but I don't mind the tie if it's kind of funny, and it really just speaks to ineptitude on one or both teams that you do tie. Because they aren't risking enough to actually win it, probably.
I'm going to assume that your favorite part of the story, though, is the ESPN headline used the word flummoxed.
Flummoxed. I do like that word, flummoxed.
Yeah, Giants Commanders flummoxed by tie amid playoff chase.
I don't know if they were really flummoxed. I don't know if they were bewildered. I would say vexed would probably be a better word.
Yeah. But I mean, you don't need to see the word flummoxed appear in a headline very often, though, do you?
No, you don't. I think vexed would be a better word than flummoxed. They both have an X in it. I think flummoxed is more they were confused by the tie, and vexed means they were frustrated by the tie. And I think they were more frustrated than confused. I think there's some overlap between vexed and flummoxed, but I think one leans more towards anger, frustration, and the other is more confused frustration. But I think both teams knew the rules coming in. It wasn't like they ended the game and what happened?
They were both surprised that the game ended in a tie.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that is the case. Maybe they didn't realize the game ended in a tie. They were ready to continue playing.
Yeah, if that goes to coaching probably. If both teams were flummoxed, I could see a Nathaniel Hackett, Josh McDaniels overtime, and you could maybe say the teams were flummoxed because neither one realized how much time was left or how many timeouts there were or things like that. But it's Ron Rivera and Brian Dable, I think, are both decent coaches, and so I think
they have their basic understanding of the rules of the game at least.
Yeah.
That's great.
I think so. I do like the use of the word flummoxed, but yeah, I don't think it was quite used in the right sense. I remember seeing that headline actually, and I thought that's a little strange, but it's got an X in it, so it sounds cool.
Yeah,
they could have used vexed, and I think that would have been more proper. But maybe there's a I'm gonna look up flummoxed. Maybe there's one of the Yeah, it's more confused, is what I see.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Confused, bewildered, baffled. That's a flummox.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, vex is seen as a synonym, but it's more irritated, or I think it's more of an irritated frustration.
upset or frustrated.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what I would say. So yeah, because you want to say, I think you want frustrated rather than confused. You want the frustrated half of it rather than the confused half to win out. Um, maybe we've want to talk about our bets. We spent a lot of time on our these power hours are getting longer rather than shorter.
yeah. Well, pretty soon they're just going to be all grammar based. I think we're going to be talking about sports.
I'm going to critique headline writing.
Maybe that's what this will morph into over time. We don't know.
So we on together we had a 500 week. We were 3-3. However, you got the best of me. You bettered me on this one. You were 2-1. I was 1-2. My lone win was the Vikings victory over the Jets. I had the Vikings -3. They won 22-17. The outcome was in doubt up until the final minutes because the Jets could have scored a touchdown at the end to win. They were driving, but Mike White threw an interception. So I won that one. The Vikings are 10-2, but they're a pretty weak 10-2, judging, especially since we'll talk about the Lions next week. They were actually road underdogs against Detroit next week.
So what, 5
Vegas,
wins on the season?
Yeah, 5-7. Vegas does not see Minnesota as being
a strong team. Yeah, right.
But they were strong enough for me on this day. They're the only team that won for me.
It was getting a little worrisome, I think, for you. Where they did get inside the 20. The Jets had gotten inside the 20, at least anyway, close to the end of the second half.
Mm-hmm. I think they did it twice actually, where they could, if they were going for a touchdown. I don't think they thought that they would have enough time. They had to maybe kick a field goal, and then they got it again. They could have kicked another field goal to win it probably.
Yeah.
But I think both one time I think they're stopped on downs, and one time they turned it over. I remember.
But yeah, they did make it interesting at least. So they were inside the 20 before time expired. That could have gotten scary. Were you worried though?
I was a little bit, but I was only. But I felt like, well, they aren't gonna kick a field goal, which would really have that would have both flummoxed and vexed me because
they got down to the 1 on the previous possession.
Yeah, they got down to the 1 on the previous possession. Yeah, and then they turned it over on downs, or they fumbled. I can't remember.
They had 3 shots from the 1-yard line and were unable to score. No gain, up middle run, incomplete pass.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
Minnesota took over 3 and out.
Turns out
burning timeouts for the Jets at the time, and then the Jets had a short drive to get back inside the 20.
Mm-hmm. So if they had kicked a field goal, from the goal line, they would have only needed a field goal at the end.
Forced the 3 and out.
Yeah, they could have. Yeah, they would have won, and they would have. But I would have been vexed by that result because there were 2. I would have been frustrated. The Vikings should have done better. But if they simply had kicked a field goal on their last drive, hoping for an onside kick and another miracle field goal, that would have flummoxed me because I would have been bewildered, and I guess I also would have been vexed because they would have covered the spread. They would have only lost by 2, and so that was my lone win, and it was a nail biter. How about your first bet?
So I had my first bet was on the Thursday night game. I had Buffalo -4 at New England, and my assumption was that Buffalo was going to need to win that game. They wanted to win that game to keep pace in front of Kansas City with a chance to take that 1 seed back. It seemed as though they won pretty handily. 24-10 was the final. New England still can't find any offense, and that
Yeah.
made it much easier for
I still think
Buffalo to cover
I still think Bailey Zappi's the
yeah.
better quarterback in Buffalo. But
I don't think he's seen the field since.
no, he hasn't not since the
then,
Chicago game. I don't think when they both
when
played.
everyone seemed to be confused by what the game plan was and who the quarterback was. Yeah,
When they were flummoxed
somebody
and
was
vexed. I think at least
some others
fans
were
might have been
totally vexed.
flummoxed, and commentators might have been flummoxed. But I think Mac Jones was vexed and perhaps flummoxed. But
Combination of the two.
yeah. I'm a little flummoxed by the lack of Bailey Zappi, although I guess Mac Jones has been a little better, but
but they are not scoring points.
They aren't scoring points,
in
and
any kind of volume that's going to lead to wins.
And they did score points when Zappi was behind under center. So
that's right.
I guess it's tough to score points against Buffalo. Buffalo's a good team, so I think that was a solid bet. Yeah, that was a pretty easy win. It seemed like maybe at the end of the first half, I think New England could have kept it closer, but Buffalo opened up a 10-point lead, and then they didn't even need to score in the third quarter, and it was really.
Yeah, there were only 2 scores in the second half combined.
Yeah. So that was a solid win for you. Talk about the Chiefs last, I guess. I lost twice. I think I was, maybe you could say I ended up being flummoxed and vexed by.
We're gonna have a counter now. How many times comes up in this episode?
The Browns Texans. The Browns were favored by 7. I bet I took the Texans +7 because I didn't think the Browns were going to be that good. I thought the Texans might be up for a game against Deshaun Watson, their former team. I thought Watson might be rusty. It turned out all of that was right. But what I didn't count on was the fact that Houston's offense would turn the ball over twice, leading to direct touchdowns for Cleveland, a fumble return touchdown and an interception return touchdown. And also the Cleveland special teams added a punt return touchdown. So they scored 21 points directly off of turnovers. Watson managed to lead the offense to only 6 points, 2 field goals, and I still lost by 13. And so I guess I failed to cover by 6 points. And that was really only that close because the Texans scored a touchdown at the very end to keep it close. But
Watson was pretty out quarterbacked by who?
Kyle Allen.
To say who even is Houston's quarterback. I was curious to see if you even knew who it was. Yeah.
Although technically, Kyle Allen had a 53.5 quarterback rating, 1 touchdown, 2 picks. Deshaun Watson had a 53.4 quarterback rating, so it was pretty close. Watson only threw 1 pick, but I guess Watson had a little more rushing yards or whatever. But yeah, it wasn't a pretty game at all. But
yeah,
my instincts were right, but the unforeseen circumstances.
You somehow didn't predict all these defensive and special team scores.
My model was off.
So far. How did you not get that, Mike?
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, how about your second?
My second pick was I did the over/under on the Miami at 49ers game. It was 46.5. I expected that game to be a shootout. It looked like it was going to be a shootout from the very first play of the game. Miami had a long touchdown pass just to kick off the game anyway. And then it got a little worrisome when Garoppolo went down with an injury on their first possession. But Brock Purdy played well enough, and the defense was strong enough, and McCaffrey had enough rushing yards for San Francisco to win the game, and I think they got to 50 points.
50 points, yeah.
33-17.
It seemed like it wasn't quite a shoot. It was a shootout on one side. You thought Miami would be a little more shooting. But yeah, they only got 17, and yeah, so that made it a little closer, maybe. Or I thought the game was more lopsided than I had thought coming in. I still thought San Francisco was going to win, but I also thought I was thinking maybe more of a 34-27 type of game.
Yeah.
And yeah, so but you covered.
It was enough
That's
to
important
get
thing.
over the 46.5. They got to 50, so good enough.
You want to talk about your third bet, then we can talk about the Chiefs a little bit, and then
Sure. My third bet was disappointing for me, at least anyway. Monday night game. I had Tampa minus 3.5. Brady did lead the team back with 2 late touchdowns to win the game, but by only a single point. So I came up a field goal short in my bet and my shot at getting to 500. I was very much hoping that Tampa would get the touchdown, miss the extra point, then go to overtime and try to get a touchdown to win it, just to cover the bet. I don't care if they win or not, but
do you feel like you were flummoxed or vexed by Taysom Hill this time because he got a touchdown for the first time in several weeks?
Yeah.
He was used as a passer. He's 1 for 1 as a quarterback for 21 yards. He ran 3 times. He also caught 2 passes, including one
long touchdown catch,
30-yard touchdown pass.
Yeah.
So
done in by Taysom Hill.
Done in by Taysom Hill.
I think it was more done in by the very poor Tampa offense. I don't know what they were doing for most of the game. I'm less concerned with the Taysom Hill thing.
Okay. Well, I wanted to.
If you had lost the bet, it would have been.
It would have been all Taysom Hill.
Yeah.
Somehow Jordan Love would have made his way into that probably as well. Now it's. I can't think of my most confused. Trey Lance might enter that world as well if these certain things come to pass for the 49ers. But it's one of those things where certain players, you don't know why they're coveted in the way that they are. And one thing I guess that was a surprise was that we're talking about, speaking of Jordan Love, he didn't start. It was Aaron Rodgers, and also it wasn't Trevor Siemian starting for the Bears. It was just so it was just what people would have guessed at the beginning of the season who the starting quarterback. So it turned out to be a much less interesting game than you had wanted, but maybe a more, I guess, a better played game between the Packers and Bears, but still
it still was pretty ugly.
Yeah.
But
the Packers are still holding on to their very, 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 very slim playoff hopes.
But are the winningest franchise in NFL history now.
Yeah, and the Bears have been eliminated from playoff contention and are down to number 2.
Yeah,
so I guess that was a big win for the.
And he can, because Rodgers continues to own the Bears, right?
That's the one team that he owns. Yeah. Most of the other teams seem to own Aaron Rodgers lately. Detroit, Minnesota.
Not gone so well recently.
Yeah, it's not gone well recently for the Chiefs against the Bengals. They've lost 3 consecutive games, each by a field goal.
And that was
one in the final
pick too, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, it was my pick. One in the final game of the regular season last year, one in the AFC Championship game, and one in this very important game for home field advantage, where the Chiefs off to a slow start. They had a slow finish and had a fumble that really turned momentum toward Cincinnati when maybe they could have gone up for the score that would have put Cincinnati away. They would have gone up 11 with about 7, probably less than 7 minutes to play. And Kelsey fumbled. It was a play where I think you had said it could have been whistled dead. You've seen it. You've seen those plays whistled dead.
Seen it many times. Yeah.
But not this time.
Yeah.
And it was just one of those weeks they kicked a field goal or tried to kick a long field goal when maybe going for it would have been better, even if they thought Mahomes was injured a little bit.
He kind of came up a little bit limping. And it may have been that Reed was a little worried about that and didn't want to risk a 4th down attempt, even though they're now 80% 4th down conversion rate.
Yeah, that field goal was
50, one of those was on
probably.
one of those on a fake punt too. Wasn't one of those fourth down plays on a fake punt?
Yeah, the one that they missed. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean that's like one of their. They've only missed 2 fourth down
Yeah, Tony
attempts.
Townsend incomplete pass, I think. Yeah, they
In
it's
ill-advised, in an ill-advised like opportunity too. It
yeah,
wasn't
it
even
was
a
sort of
good.
a fluke trip up of Mahomes too from behind, where he usually makes those, and he was going to get a first down, but he got tripped up barely from behind, and that must have, it seemed like it hurt his ankle or something.
Yeah.
And then there were weird play calls down at the goal line where Mahomes is split out wide. McKinnon is like, that doesn't
Under
fool
center.
anybody. Like, you know, like they're gonna have if they want to throw it to Mahomes, like that's like you have a worse passer throwing to a worse receiver,
Yeah.
and unless there's like a lot of misdirection and things like that, it's not gonna. I guess maybe it's surprised. I don't know. It was, there were lots of, and that forced Mahomes to really put himself in harm's way again, trying to get that fourth down touchdown that he just barely got over the line. If he didn't, you know, it's very possible that he wouldn't have gotten that, and they would have kind of otherwise zero, no points there. So it's, I think the Chiefs need to find a way to protect Mahomes and also throw, you know, find some receiving targets that aren't just Kelsey. And I think Juju going out for a lot of the game hurt. Having no Hardman, no Tony, who are the sort of game breakers.
Those deep, like speedster deep threats are just not. They're just not there right now. They're just not healthy.
Yeah, it's just Valdez Scantling, and he drops as many as he catches. It seems like.
Yeah.
He made two
He made a couple
really
pretty
good
good
catches, but he dropped a couple. He dropped one really bad, and the other
in
one
the end zone.
and then the other one was broken up in a good play.
Yeah.
But yeah, he doesn't always come down with the ball.
He seems to drop one pass that he definitely should have caught.
Yeah. I guess we were complaining about Hardman not catching everything either before, but
yeah,
I think the speed of Hardman and the speed of Tony, when we had Tony healthy, were really added extra dimensions to the offense.
Well, it's at least the threat of that may pull another defender towards the threat and may open up lots of other things underneath, because they don't really do a whole lot of screen passes right now.
No,
they don't have any of those like kind of gadgety plays. Like
yeah, they do some to McKinnon. McKinnon ran the ball pretty well when he got a chance.
Yeah,
although he ran right into Eric into Wiley on that one running play, and that cost him a touch. And that cost him a touchdown, I think. And they had a kick field goal, and it was strange. Yeah, the Chiefs were favored by 2.5. They lost by 3, so that was my second loss last week. I don't know if we want to rehash any more of the Chiefs game, but now they're 9-3, tied with Buffalo, but Buffalo has the home field, has the tiebreaker advantage. So Buffalo's the number 1 seed. Chiefs are down to number 2. Yes. I guess we could say the Chiefs' schedule from here on out is much easier than Buffalo's. But Buffalo will have to lose one of those games for the Chiefs to have a chance.
Right. And Buffalo's more than capable of winning all the games, as long as they're able to show up for all of them and everything. Right?
Yeah, I guess it's possible you might say that being a number 2 seed has an advantage because you get to play the weakest of the playoff teams, and that's probably like the Jets or somebody. The Chiefs might get, like, they had the Steelers at home last year, so the Steelers were not good. It was almost like a walkover, and then you get the team. Then you won't have to play the team that upsets one of the favorites on the road as the second team. Like the Titans had to play the Bengals second round. I guess the Chiefs had to play the Bills, which was probably a harder game. They won. But yeah, it's one of those things where I think number 2, if you can make it through that 2-7 game fairly easily, sometimes the way the things shake out, being number 2 might be better than number 1, given the way the NFL seeding works as opposed to.
Well, and the Chiefs have hosted an AFC championship game when not being the 1 seed.
Yeah.
Right. So they've found a way to like end up hosting that game.
I think they've only been the 1 seed once.
One of the 4.
One of the 4, yeah.
Yeah.
And that wasn't the year they won the Super Bowl. That was the year they lost the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like right now, like, so the Chiefs as the number 2 seed. They would play the Jets at home, which I think would be an easy winner. 3 versus 6 would be Baltimore and Miami. Miami at Baltimore. 5-4 would be Cincinnati at Tennessee. So you might say, well, you think probably Cincinnati will beat Tennessee. Baltimore will beat Miami. And if you're the number 2 seed, you would play Baltimore rather than Cincinnati. I think Baltimore's not as good as the Bengals are.
I think where the real risk, though, from Kansas City's perspective comes in is the Bengals are likely to take their division lead in the next couple of weeks. And then the Chiefs, if they drop another game and the Bengals don't, then we'll fall behind them too. And into the 3 spot, which still isn't necessarily a bad thing. I mean, they should be able to beat any team in the field. It shouldn't make any difference.
It would probably require 2 road wins in the playoffs rather than just 1.
You're gonna have to win on the road, unless there is like even more upsets in the playoffs.
Probably in Cincinnati and in Buffalo.
Yeah.
So
if you have to choose, you don't want that route to the Super Bowl.
Well, would you want to talk more about? We can talk more about football. Week 14 coming up. Since you've been talking about the future, do you want to take a little break and talk about baseball for a second?
Well, it's let me just say real quick that the where we are. Competition. So now through week 13, you are 17-22, minus 500. And I'm now 18-20-1 with the 1 push, minus 200.
Minus 200. So
I've taken a bit of a lead now.
You're getting closer and closer to 500. I've moved a little bit away the last couple of weeks from 500. I've been 1 and 2 consecutive weeks. So I need to
pick that up.
Yeah.
Okay. Now let's talk about baseball.
Sorry to be jumped the gun. What's new in the world of baseball, Andrew?
So there were a couple big stories, I guess. Recently, one is a Royals story. Maybe we just knock that one out real quick.
Okay.
The Royals have signed pitching coach,
and
an assistant pitching coach, which wasn't a position they had before. So they are going all in on an analytics approach, picking up the bullpen coach from Cleveland, Brian Sweeney, and the assistant pitching coordinator
from Minnesota, Zach Bove. He was also up for the Mets bullpen coach vacancy this offseason. So I guess I don't know if assistant pitching coach is higher than bullpen coach. I don't know if the Royals have a bullpen coach, and it's just assistant.
So, but I'm not sure.
Or is just assistant pitching coach the same thing as the bullpen coach? No.
I'm not sure. I think they more or less have created a new position to be, so that they can tackle trying to develop an entire franchise worth of pitching prospects, because they have not done that very well in the past.
Okay, so it says
trying to get more out of what they already have first, and then use a more analytics approach to trying to develop, get more out of their current players. I think that's really cool.
It says Larry Carter.
Like a nice change, at least from what they've been doing.
Yeah, Larry Carter is the bullpen coach apparently.
Okay.
I don't know who Larry Carter is.
No, don't know. I remember the bullpen catcher used to be our former high school gym coach.
Yeah, Bill Selby.
Selby.
Yeah, he was drafted by the Mets, I believe, at one point.
All right.
He played minor league baseball. But Larry Carter was promoted as bullpen coach before the 2020 season, so I don't know if he'll still be around as the bullpen coach. He'll stay into the new, but or maybe the assistant pitching coach will become the bullpen coach. But he's still listed on the Royals staff as Carter played he played a little bit in the majors. He had a 1-5 record, 21 strikeouts. Played for the Giants in 1992, September call-up. But yeah, I guess that's good. The one of the other big stories was the Baseball Hall of Fame picking Fred McGriff,
Mm-hmm.
who played for about 8 or 9 different teams, it seems like, over his long career, as the only representative from the contemporary committee, or whatever it was called.
Contemporary era committee, yeah.
Contemporary era committee, as a Hall of Famer. What do you think of McGriff's selection, and do you think anybody was left off who should have been put in?
Well, I remember Fred McGriff pretty fondly from the Braves days, from the 90s, I guess. That was when I remember him, at least, anyway.
I remember probably most from those Tom Amansky baseball instructional videos, where he was, these are the videos to get results.
Yes.
Major League Baseball player Fred, he had that high hat, he had like really high hat.
Yeah. Right. Right.
Yeah.
The crime dog, though.
Crime dog. I think it's fine. I wouldn't. I never thought of him as a really, really great player. He had like 493 home runs, not quite 500. He was a great hitter. I don't know if he did a lot. I think I mentioned this off the air. He reminded me, he played a position unlike Harold Baines, but he reminded me kind of Harold Baines, somebody who was very consistent and solid, but maybe not somebody who was a superstar every year. He
hit 30 or more homers for 5 different franchises, though, Mike. Is that impressive?
Do you know what his record for home runs in a year was?
Did he ever hit 40?
No, he never hit 40 home runs.
Yeah.
37 was his highest.
But remember, 37 would have been the Royals team record until
that's true,
like 3 seasons ago.
Well, that's true, but you'd say, well, the Royals haven't had any Hall of Fame power hitters either.
Yeah.
He had a very
couple
long
of Hall of Famers, but not home run hitters, really. Yeah.
He played 19 years. He had a very long career. He was known as a home run hitter. I think he was very good, but he was very bad at defense. He had -17 defensive WAR over his career, playing various positions. And he was a DH. He was in the National League most of the time.
Maybe he should have been watching some of those instructional videos.
I think, maybe he should have been trying to throw the baseball into the trash can at home plate. Yeah, like Tom Amansky's players. But I don't know if any of Tom Amansky's players made the majors.
I don't know. McGriff did end up with twice as many votes as Don Mattingly on the list of contemporary players that had fallen off the ballot for the traditional Hall of Fame voting. Don Mattingly, Curt Schilling, Dale Murphy, Albert Bell, Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, Rafael Palmeiro were the other players that got votes.
Bonds, Clemens, and Palmeiro were super steroid guys, so they weren't going to get in.
Bell was probably questionable about that as well.
Yeah, he also had a
but
he had a shorter career too than this other guy. Schilling became just a jerk.
Yeah,
or was a jerk.
He had a steroid questions though, I think, too, around his career, especially towards the end.
I think had he not become this kind of right-wing blowhard, he would be in the Hall of Fame because of what he did for the Red Sox.
The bloody sock. That's already in the Hall of Fame anyway, right? So
Albert Bell didn't make because he only played for 12 years. I think also you could say his.
Although I believe he's still being paid, though, is he not?
There's Bobby Bonilla you're thinking of.
No, I'm pretty sure Bell had another one of those long contracts.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, so Bell only played for 12 years. He retired at age 33. But in those 12 years, he hit 381 home runs, almost 100, just 100 or a little over 100 fewer than McGriff, who played for 19 years. So, and I think I don't know. I think Bell was a better player in his prime than McGriff was. I really think I'm surprised Don Mattingly hasn't made it. I think Mattingly
Yeah.
is, especially during his prime, was perhaps the best player in baseball. You could say he won MVP in 1985. He hit, for average, he hit the power. He was, the Yankees didn't win while he was there, so maybe that penalizes him. And he had a fairly short career, but I think you could say he was one of the best players in baseball when he was at his peak. I don't think you can say that about Fred McGriff.
Yeah.
And so that's why I would say that his Hall of Fame status is, I think he's Hall of very good, but not fame. I would say Mattingly was a better player in his prime, but he didn't last as long. But
he also didn't win a championship, and that's what some of those voters tend to like rely heavily on that for.
I guess McGriff won
with Atlanta, I think, right?
Atlanta, was he? When did Atlanta? Yeah,
95.
Yeah. So for Atlanta that year, 95, he had 27 home runs, 93 RBI, solid season. But his best years were with Toronto and then San Diego early in his career, and he just kind of held on and was a serviceable power hitter. But yeah, bad in the field. I don't know. I think I'm happy for Fred McGriff, and I think it seems like probably he may not have been one of those steroid guys, but even so, I think, think of the outfield that the Blue Jays had in the late 80s.
Mm-hmm.
You had Jesse Barfield, you had George Bell, Lloyd Mosby. I think McGriff, he was maybe younger than those guys a little bit, but I don't know if he was as good as any of those three at their height.
Yeah.
It's but he was younger. I don't know. He left the Blue Jays right when the Blue Jays won the World Series a couple times. So before they won. I don't know. I get it, but I also think the steroid hate is played at this point. Why not?
Yeah. So those some of those other guys are probably like locked out more or less until
I think Palmeiro was the same player basically as McGriff.
Yeah.
He had more hits and more home runs, but he was also a guy that was never the best.
Mm-hmm.
He was just long-term, remarkably consistent. And then as his career went on later, he got more and more power, 40 plus home runs. So that was the precedent. But like, had he not,
well, then he had that weird like testimony.
It was really damning
in front of Congress. That was not very good. The weird thing about Bell's contract was that he signed a big contract, 5 years, $65 million deal, and he got hurt. Or he was already hurt, I think, when he signed it. He had that hip problem. He only made it partway through the contract, and the Orioles ended up keeping him on the roster, on the active roster, just to get the insurance policy to cover his contract, so they didn't have to like pay it out without having anything having the responsibility, the financial responsibility for him. So they released him, they would have just had to pay him forever, basically a lot of money for not playing at all. But yeah, if they kept him on the active roster and put him on the injured list, then they could get an insurance policy to like pay out the contract. That was the weird thing about his not like the Bobby Bonilla one. I was thinking it was similar to that, where they paid him out over like 60 years or something to like finish his salary out without having to pay him that amount of money, be responsible for it at least anyway. So that was that.
So Don Mattingly does have some interesting records.
Okay.
He has a record for the most home runs in the most consecutive games.
Ooh.
Of any player. Actually, he's tied. He's tied for the major league record. How many consecutive games did Don Mattingly hit a home run in?
If that's a major league record, it's going to be, I'll say 7.
8. This is in 1987. He hit home runs in 8 consecutive games. He actually hit 10 home runs in those 8 games.
Wow.
The National League record was made by Dale Long, who I've never heard of, 1956 for Pittsburgh. He only hit 8. He hit exactly 1 home run in each of those games. Whereas
Yeah.
Mattingly,
He actually had 8 career home runs. It was those 8.
Dale Long hit a total of 132 home runs over a 10-year
funny.
career. But 1956, he hit 27 home runs. 8 of them happened to occur in that span.
Games. Wow.
Don Mattingly only hit 222 home runs in his career. After 1989, his career really tailed off for home runs. So maybe that was part of he wasn't the player he was early in his career, and I think that was held against him. But I still think of him as a great player. Speaking of Don Mattingly, I was also thinking of the 1980s baseball stat that was kept in the 1980s. This was on back of baseball cards and things like that. And this was a really dumb kind of stat, but it was seen as a measure of a person's clutchness, and that was game-winning RBIs. And it was the person who batted in the run that ended up winning the game. But the game-winning RBI could occur in the 2nd or 3rd inning, and it would still count as a game-winning RBI because they went up 3-1 and they lost and they won the game 3-2, and so that was the game-winning RBI back in the day.
They do keep that stat in hockey. That's a fairly important stat. Game-winning goal in hockey. They still keep that now. But.
Yeah, that's still kind of a weird. Yeah. I guess it's maybe a little better, but not. I don't know. I still think of it as kind of a lame stat.
That's kind of silly, yeah.
Who from making 80 to 88? Which player? I'll say it's a National League. It's a National League player who played for the National League his entire career. At least from 80 to 88, he played in the National League. Who had the most game-winning RBIs?
Okay. So
any further hints?
I have a guess.
Okay.
In the National League, when you said National League, it refined my guesses from 3 different guesses to 1. So we'll have to see if it's right. But I will say Robin Yount.
Not Robin Yount. Oh. Robin Yount played for the Brewers, but that was when the Brewers
were in the American League then, though.
Yeah.
So I was wrong on a technicality before it even started. Oh man. So 80s National League player. How about Tony Gwynn?
It's not Tony Gwynn.
No.
Want a hint?
Sure.
It turns out he did play 1 season in the American League, and that was in 1990 when he played for Cleveland. But he split his time basically kind of half between 2 teams. He's more famous probably for his 2nd team, but he won an MVP playing for the 1st team.
I'm not.
Okay, I'll give you another. He won 2 World Series, 1 for each team.
Oh.
National League MVP in 1979 for the St. Louis Cardinals.
Now I'm not even thinking the 80s Cardinal stars.
Well, he left in the early 80s. Then he became a star for
another team.
I think
no, I don't know.
Probably most famous for appearing on Seinfeld.
Oh. Well, then so there's just a few then. That narrows it down a lot. Oh, was there a famous play around him then? No, that was not him. Oh, what was his name? Keith Hernandez.
Yeah. Keith Hernandez. I was also going to say kind of the counterpart to Mattingly's first baseman. He was first baseman for the Mets when Mattingly was first baseman for the Yankees. And he won the MVP in 1979 for the Cardinals, but is also very famous for the Game 6 of the and playing for the New York Mets. And he briefly became Jerry's friend and also Elaine's love interest.
Why did they stop being friends though, Mike?
Keith wanted Jerry to help him move, and that was a little too much. But Newman and Kramer, who had been sworn enemies of Keith Hernandez because they thought Hernandez spit on them.
The magic loogie.
Nice game, pretty boy. Mets, Phillies, yeah.
Yeah, who was it that was actually responsible for the magic?
Roger McDowell.
Yeah.
Because they had dumped beer on McDowell's head while he was sitting in the bullpen.
They've been taunting him the entire game. Heckling. There were a few other players that appeared.
Yeah, they were all Yankees players. Yeah.
One former Royal.
Jay Tartable. That was the game where George was trying to drive him to the telethon, and he felt like the guy on the turnpike flipped him off, but it turned out he was wearing a cast that only left his middle finger exposed. So,
yes.
And that was also the episode where Mr. Pitt was eating a candy bar with a knife and fork.
Yeah, that's right.
So, yeah, those were good. Those were good days. And Derek Jeter was on briefly. Paul O'Neill, of course, was approached by Kramer to hit two home runs.
2 home runs. Come on, he's not even a home run hitter.
And then when he stole the card, the birthday card back, Paul O'Neill had to catch a fly ball in his hat the next game. We don't know if that ever happened, but he had a triple and an error and then a real home run. So
yeah, that kid got really upset too, didn't he? Yeah.
That kid who was in the sick bed he had played another kid earlier in the series. He played like a kid in a soap opera, and Mickey, the little person that was Kramer's friend, was the stand-in for him for the lighting. And then the kid kept growing, so Mickey ended up putting lifts in his shoes, and that became a big sticking point because you can't do that as a little person. And
wow.
Yeah. Did you see that episode?
I mean, I've seen it.
Probably,
I remember that part though. Yeah.
Yeah. Kramer. Yeah. It's good. He and Kramer were a good pair. Big and little is always funny.
Yeah. That's always good.
Any more baseball?
So, one more quick story. A couple big free agent signings and a question then for you. Justin Verlander signed a 2-year, $47 million deal to go to the Mets. Jacob deGrom signed a 5-year, $147 million.
No, 2-year, $86 million.
86,
deal.
sorry.
43 million a year.
43 a year, yeah. 86 million, yeah. deGrom 5-year, roughly 150 million to go to the Rangers. And Trey Turner signed an 11-year, $300 million deal to go to the Phillies. Of those 3 contracts, which do you think is most likely to complete the contract?
I think it's just the shortest one. I think Verlander,
only
2 years. He's gonna be 40 years old next year, but he just pitches his years 40 and 41 season. That's it. I think he'll complete it. He's kind of a horse and has
he missed some games recently. Did he missed like a bunch in 1 year, didn't he?
Yeah, he had like a blip in the middle of his career where he didn't he didn't pitch at all in 2021.
Yeah, I think he missed that year with Tommy John, right? And then
he had and then there's the COVID year.
Yeah,
he only pitched 1 game in 2020.
Yeah,
but he had full seasons every other year, pretty much. He had 1 injury, I guess in 2015. It looks like for Detroit, but he's been durable every other year. It seems like.
Well, in the 2021 season.
Other than 21, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's won the last 2 full seasons he's pitched. He's won the Cy Young Award.
Cy Young's
1.75 ERA last year, 18-4. So this is one of those things where, as well, is Verlander, juicing. His career looks an awful lot like Roger Clemens' career, where
Yeah.
Clemens was really great phenom, and then he kind of had a cooling off period, and then as he got older, he got really good again. It's really what we see with.
So the difference being with like certain pitchers like John Smoltz, who like went to the bullpen and figured out how to have a different career afterwards, or Greg Maddux, who became like a masterful pitcher, but not throwing very hard as he aged. Verlander has somehow increased his velocity as he has aged.
Yeah,
that is usually not how things go, Mike.
I know. So that's he had a really fast fastball when he was younger, and then it dropped off, and then it went up again. So I don't know if he has lost it or if there's something else going on, but he has been a very productive, very solid pitcher at the minimum, and then like a superstar when he's really on. So again, he's only got 2 years. DeGrom, I think, he's younger. He's like he's 34 now. I think he was much older than we thought he was. But he hasn't pitched much the last few years. So
he's 34 right now, yeah.
And so he'd be 39 when he finishes, so younger than Verlander is now. But I would say that Verlander is more likely to finish, and Turner would also be about 40 when he finishes his contract. I don't know if he plays another 11 years. So I would say Verlander. As to which contract I'd rather have,
yeah,
I guess also Verlander because it's off the books in 2 years. So
it's a lot more money though per year.
Yeah, but it's you think, well, I'm going to get a top pitcher for 2 years. He's going to,
But he's essentially replacing a top pitcher who just left in DeGrom.
And I guess you think also he's going to be healthy where DeGrom wasn't, and that's the gamble.
Yeah.
How about you? Which one would you rather have?
I don't see how Verlander is still doing what he's doing. But I don't know. I guess from your the same thing you just mentioned anyway. He's out faster, so it's fine. It'd be better to get rid of him quicker. I understand that. I don't know how he's going to make the value to the Mets that his contract is worth.
I guess if you think the Mets almost made the playoffs last year, they fell apart. You think maybe they could have gone to the World Series because they saw the Phillies do that. The Phillies took the Mets playoff spot, and the Phillies ended up going to the World Series and actually challenged Houston. So maybe you think, well, Verlander will put us over the top, and we can win a World Series for the first time since.
But they still have to get by the Phillies, who just
1986
spent less money per year on a guy who plays every single day instead of every fifth game.
Yeah.
So I don't see how he brings more value than Trey Turner brings to Philly.
I guess you could say the Mets aren't done. Maybe they sign Carlos Correa or somebody who is better than Turner.
Yeah. But it seems to me that players go to the Mets on big contracts and don't live up to those deals.
Yeah. You remember Johan Santana or he got hurt. They have star-crossed
the best players they've had in recent times were like the players that led them to the World Series in 2015, right? Were guys that they were homegrown talent that came up from the minor league system that actually made them interesting, like Matt Harvey and DeGrom and Syndergaard, and those seem to be the guys that I think they had the most success with, at least anyway. I don't think they've had that much success with actually going out and spending huge amounts of money on guys, because they've gotten pretty big in contracts in the last couple of years because they just brought in Scherzer too on a big deal.
Well, they did.
So I don't see how they're going to get the value of what they're spending on some of these players.
Yeah, Daniel Murphy was one of their homegrown players. They did bring in Curtis Granderson towards the end of his career. Kadire that they had brought in from the Twins. So they had a few players, but most of their guys.
Those weren't guys they went and spent like this kind of money on.
Yeah, David Wright had been there for a long time. It was sort of the tail end of his career. He had lost his stuff for injuries, but he played in the playoffs.
But the Mets just aren't the Yankees. Like they don't seem to have that ability to go get the big name free agent and then have them perform to like the level that like the 2000s Yankees got.
That's true.
So when they would go out and get trade for Alex Rodriguez and have them actually perform, and then they would win championship games, right? So it's they're not the Mets aren't the Yankees. I just don't see how they can get value, $46 million worth of value from Verlander.
Yeah, but it's only 2 years.
Right. Right. But that's like 6 years of maybe a younger but more talented player.
Maybe, but yeah, I don't know. He's a
you're
name.
really
He's a
defining
draw.
your window for what your expectation to try to win a championship is like right now. And if they don't win it right now, then it's a big waste.
Yeah. Well, speaking of championships, right now we have 2 of them going on the next month. One is the college football playoff. Want to talk briefly about the CFP? Do you have? Maybe we'll just go through the team. So there was a little bit of chaos in the last week of the season since USC was number 4 in the playoff coming in.
Mm-hmm.
They lost to Utah fairly handily in the Pac-10,
So
Pac-12.
their second loss
Their
against
second loss, Pac-12 championship.
Yeah.
Utah had already 2 or 3 losses, so they weren't in it. We also had TCU, which was undefeated in 3rd place in the ranking system. They lost in overtime and very 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 close game. Even for overtime purposes, a close game. A game of inches to K-State. And it turns out, well, TCU didn't fall out of the top 4. They stayed at number 3 because USC lost. And Ohio State entered as number 4. Perhaps they entered as number 4 because they didn't want a Michigan-Ohio State semifinal since they had just played.
Right.
They would say, well, maybe we want to leave it to the final if
Should they
that
both
happened.
advance? Right.
Yeah. And so the only 2 undefeated teams have are Michigan and Georgia is number 1, Michigan number 2. Who do you like in the CFP championships?
I fully expect to see Georgia and Michigan in the final game, and I think Michigan's going to roll TCU because I don't think they are nearly the team that Michigan is, and yeah, so that's my expectation. I think Georgia will win, but I will kind of root for Michigan. That's my.
I would say even the Georgia's number 1. I think Ohio State is also probably better than TCU. I would say Ohio State has a better chance of beating Georgia than TCU has
would,
beating Michigan. And so I see probably also a Georgia, Michigan, and I would like to see Michigan win. And I think Michigan could win because I don't think the SEC has been as tough, and Georgia hasn't been as tested as in years past because they haven't played Alabama in the championship. They haven't. The Florida was down this year. Tennessee was good, but the SEC was kind of weak in the, especially the East. So LSU was a fairly weak Western Division winner. I'm glad that Alabama didn't make the top 4.
Yeah, I kind of expected them to end up sneaking in there when I saw when TCU was losing that.
I think because they lost so close, it was essentially a tie.
Yeah.
So I like you. I think really 2 teams kind of have shown themselves as being the class, especially because Michigan beat Ohio State so handily.
Right.
And so if that had been a close game, I would say, well, it's really just a toss-up. But it was in Columbus. Michigan seems like they got a really good offense, strong defense. Georgia has the same. I think. So it should be a interesting. At least there's a few different teams in it this year. At least TCU is completely different. Ohio State and Michigan both, I think, adds an interesting element. And I think not seeing Alabama, even if Georgia's in it again. Yeah. No Clemson either. I'm tired of Clemson.
Yeah.
I really don't like Dabo Swinney.
Yeah.
So
Dabo.
Yeah, Clemson also lost their game, ACC. So had they maybe won the ACC championship, they would have only had one loss. So maybe you think maybe they can sneak in,
Yeah.
but they didn't. They lost to North Carolina, I think. Yeah. So that's that football.
Yeah, what about the other championship?
The other championship, of course, is the Copa Mundial, the World Cup in Qatar. We have the quarterfinals now set. Unfortunately, did you watch Team USA lose to the Netherlands on Saturday?
It did. Yeah.
What'd you think of that game?
I mean, I think they played fairly well. They had a couple chances. It was unfortunate that the U.S. chances were so infrequent. And then when the Netherlands had a chance, it was like a very fast, like crushing goal.
Clinical finishes.
Mm.
I think had Pulisic made that first goal, which he was wide open, he one-timed it where I don't think he really needed to.
Probably didn't need to. Yeah.
He had more time. He could have done something else with it and picked his spot a little better rather than just kind of try to kick it towards goal and hope for the best, which is kind of what happened.
Yeah.
It still could have scored. That was a good save, but like that was he hurried a little bit more than he needed to.
Yeah.
And I think that sort of showed the difference between the USA and the Dutch, because the Dutch were more composed, and it feels like they had been there before, played in bigger games. At least more of their players had, and every time they had a open shot in the area, it was bottom left corner, bottom right corner. It was
right in a place that was more or less impossible to get to for even a very good goalkeeper.
Yeah, and then the USA doesn't have a real striker to score goals. They have a lot of good midfield play and outside play, but when they kick it into the box, there's nobody in there to do anything with it. Their one goal was just kind of a fluke. They just kind of hit off Haji Wright's, like, he kind of stepped on the ball, it seemed like, and it went backwards in somehow.
Yeah. It was a little strange, but it got a little interesting for a moment when
it was 2-1.
They were down 2-0, and they got the one goal. There was plenty of time left to have that threat at least to equalize it, and then an immediate goal the Netherlands can.
So we have the quarterfinals set.
Yeah, but I would say that the U.S. I believe was ranked 16th in the FIFA rankings going into this World Cup. They made it to the round of 16. But basically, they were exactly where they're supposed to be.
Yeah, I think
wasn't a disappointing World Cup. I think this is probably what we should have expected as like a good finish, and I think I'm fine with it anyway. But
I think so too. I would have liked I would have liked a closer game against the Netherlands. I think the way they played was better, but the finishing wasn't there, and it was just honestly, they were lucky to get that goal. But once they got it, it seemed like they should have done something a little better with it rather than doing another easy goal. But I think the second goal was the worst one, I think, right next to halftime. And it was almost the exact same type of goal as the first one, where the guy was just kind of wide open in the box. Third goal, also just a guy nobody was covering him. But had it been an American player, you don't know if they would have made it.
It was blasted it over the crossbar or something like that, right?
Yeah. So the quarterfinals, I think, are set. The Netherlands will play Argentina, Croatia, which beat Japan on penalty kicks. Japan had been a pretty good team. Will play Brazil. Croatia, I don't know if you remember, actually got second place 4 years ago. So they have a very good team. Luka Modric and other players are pretty good there. France and England battle, and then Morocco, the upset winner today over Spain on penalty kicks. We'll play Portugal, who won 6-1 today when Gonzalo Ramos has a hat trick. He replaced Cristiano Ronaldo, who had been he and his coach aren't getting along very well. so he was on the bench today, and Portugal won 6-1 over Switzerland. So Portugal's looking pretty good. Morocco surprising. I think everybody's expected France, England, Brazil,
Mhm.
Argentina, Netherlands aren't
Yeah.
surprising. Croatia's not surprising. You have a favorite?
Right. So really, Morocco is the only real surprise
Yeah.
in this that advanced in the knockout round.
Yeah,
Yeah.
had it been Spain, Portugal, France, England, that would have been all chalk.
Shock. Yeah.
Which would have been an interesting game. Spain and Portugal, France, England, like the two rivals, biggest rivals of each other probably in
Yeah.
Europe. And then I think having the South American teams, potential Brazil Argentina matchup in the semifinals,
Hmm.
or Brazil Netherlands would also be. I think we'd be surprised if Croatia beats Brazil, but who knows? Yeah. So do you think Brazil's still the favorite to win? Neymar seems to be healthy again.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to bet against Brazil in these, unless they're facing a Germany squad where they giving up, what was it, 6 or 7 goals that one year.
Yeah. So 538 has rankings. Brazil right now they have is a 33% chance to win the World Cup.
Okay.
Um,
Who's second in the
Portugal and England tied at 14%.
really?
Argentina 13, France 12. So basically the same, Portugal through France. And the Netherlands is 7%.
I'm a little surprised here that England isn't at least even with France, because they have to get through that one game, right?
I think England has a 52% chance of winning against France. France is 48%, it says. But then I think
Maybe France doesn't match up as well against Portugal.
I think Portugal, Morocco. Maybe you think, well, if Morocco happens to win, France or England have a better chance, or maybe I don't think Portugal's as good. I'm not sure, but Portugal I think has an easier quarterfinal, at least on paper, because they're playing Morocco.
Yeah. This is Switzerland is actually okay, aren't they?
Yeah, Switzerland's been all right. Yeah,
They just give 6 goals to Portugal though, so
Spain was
without Ronaldo starting, so
yeah.
I would think Portugal's odds could go way up right now.
I think they did. I think they probably would have been below. They're 14%. They're slightly higher. They have a 33% of chance of making the final, it says. That's second highest.
Okay.
Brazil has a 51% chance of making the final. 77% chance of semi. So Croatia has the least likely chance of winning this next game, but it says they still have a slightly better chance of going far than Morocco.
Yeah. Did you have the next games aren't until the 13th and 14th next week?
So a little bit of time off.
Yeah, Tuesday, Wednesday next week, I guess, for the next 2 games.
Yep.
Wait,
no, quarterfinal. No, their quarterfinals are
9th and 10th.
No,
yeah.
Semifinals are 13th.
Yeah, yeah. Yes.
Quarterfinals will be Friday, Saturday.
Right. Okay. So should we take down predictions for this?
Okay.
Who do you have in the quarters then, Mike?
So winning the quarters, I think I actually like the Netherlands over Argentina.
Okay.
Given how they look against the United States versus Argentina against Australia. And I'd say I see a Netherlands-Brazil semi. And I see Portugal against France. I think England will blow it. I think France has more big game experience. I think they have a lot of missing players, but I think I don't think they don't have the psychological weight on them that England does. England's only won one World Cup. They won it in 1966, I believe, when they hosted it, and France won last time, and
yeah,
they've won it twice recently already. And so, I don't think there's any pressure on France in the way there is against England. And every little thing, if England does it wrong, they're going to be excoriated. And so I think there'll be. I think France will play looser. So I see a France Portugal semi, Um, Netherlands, Brazil, and I would say Brazil, France final, and probably Brazil winning. That's my guess.
Well, I was gonna say Argentina, Brazil,
Okay.
and I was gonna say France, Portugal too, but now that you have that same one, I'll say England, Portugal,
Okay.
just to be different.
Mhm.
And then I'll say a Brazil, Portugal final.
Ooh, battle of the Portuguese teams.
Yes.
Not a battle
Yeah,
of the Falklands again between
right.
Argentina and England.
Right.
Messi trying to win his first.
Yeah.
That would be fun. I think Argentina and England, because I think there would be so much pressure on both of those teams,
Oh yeah.
because Messi, that's like seen as the thing that he's never won a World Cup. I guess you could say
Mhm.
Ronaldo's never won a World Cup either, but Portugal's not seen as the power quite that
Yeah.
Argentina is. And Portugal, I think, won the European Championship one time, so like that's as tough as the win probably as the World Cup, really.
Yeah.
Okay. Uh, you want to transition back to our other football
Sure.
and
Let's
end this
maybe let's
mega
get this
power hour?
through this quickly here. Would probably be good.
Yeah. Okay. Next. Okay. So next week we have an interesting slate. Week 14. Um, what what is your first bet next week?
My first pick is I'm gonna stick with the theme I started last week with Buffalo needing to win to hang on to their 1 seed. They're a 9.5 point favorite over the Jets. I'm gonna take Buffalo minus 9.5 at home
I
against the
could
Jets.
see that. I think Mike White is a good story, but I don't think the Jets offense can keep up against a really good defense. And also the Bills lost to the Jets earlier this year, so I'd say they're probably out for blood. Although maybe the Jets have the number, who knows? But I if I had to pick one side, I would take the home favorite Bills. My first bet is also a 9.5 point favorite, and maybe it's a dumb bet, but I'm going back with the Chiefs. The Chiefs on the road against Denver. Denver's terrible. I think the Chiefs really want to get right, and maybe they can do that in Denver. They've won their last games against Denver handily, so I think maybe they can continue that. I if they yeah. So I'm doing Chiefs minus 9.5. They've been bad against the spread, but I think one of these times they're going to have to pull it. So
And Denver's defense is really good, but the Chiefs don't seem to struggle against teams with good defenses. They seem to figure out how to pick apart basically anybody and score
yeah, they
points,
score about the same against
regardless of
whoever.
what the defense is. Yeah.
Yeah, even
And
if they're having an off game, they'll still score 20 something points usually. And Denver's only scored more than 16 points twice this season, I think. So
yeah,
I don't think Denver can keep up.
they don't
They would
seem
have
to have any way to put points on the board. And
Russell Wilson.
the only way that the Chiefs tend to lose games is by giving up a lot of points. And I don't know that Denver can actually score a lot of points. So
Yeah, I
uh,
think Russell Wilson will have to somehow
teams.
morph back into Seattle Russell Wilson of like 8 years ago, and
Mhm.
I don't know if that's happening.
I
Um,
wouldn't predict that.
Seattle did beat Mahomes, his Chiefs, Mahomes' rookie year with
Mhm.
Wilson, and Wilson had a very good game that game. So I guess it's possible, but I still like the Chiefs minus 9.5.
Yeah.
How about your second?
My second pick is I'm gonna stick with San Francisco again and Brock Purdy against Purdy versus Brady is what this one is, right? And it's San Francisco minus 3.5 at home against Tampa Bay. I think San Francisco's defense is strong enough. They've got and again they have McCaffrey. They just need a serviceable quarterback there. I think Brock Purdy can do it. That's what, and I don't think that the Bucks have been very good at scoring, and seems like San Francisco scores somewhat against anybody. So I like San Francisco minus 3.5.
Is Purdy the next Tom Brady, low round draft pick, who replaces
Even even lower
um,
round.
more highly touted starter quarterback
Ooh.
with and leads has a good defense and serviceable offense to carry his team into the playoffs and maybe Super Bowl victory? Is that in the cards for Purdy?
I'd like to see that. I again wouldn't predict it though. So
I would like to see that only if the Chiefs were not in the Super Bowl. I would like to see Brock Purdy go down. But if the Chiefs were playing the 49ers again, but
yeah,
I wish Brock Purdy the best, and I hope they beat Tampa Bay. My second bet also repeats a theme from last week where I missed. I missed on the Texans +7 against Cleveland, but it took 3 defensive touchdowns for them to not cover. Even had they only had 2 defensive touchdowns, I would have covered that game. So the Texans are playing at Dallas. They are 17-point underdogs. That's just so many points. I know Dallas has been coming off some big wins, but I don't think they're going to really care that much. I think they're just going to try to get through, stay healthy for the end of the season. And, 17 is too many points. So I'm going to go with the Texans +17.
that is maybe the biggest spread I think we've seen maybe this season, actually. But yeah, Dallas would have covered that last week with their fourth quarter, their 5 touchdown fourth quarter, week 13. But yeah, are they going to do that again?
I don't think so, but who knows?
Maybe not. Yeah, maybe not.
My instincts have been off more than they've been right so far. So if you've been playing against me and just picking the opposite, you'd be 22-17 rather than 17-22. So
that's right.
You'd be a real good gambler in Vegas. So
see what Mike does, do the other thing.
Opposite. Yeah. How about your second pick?
My third pick, I guess.
Third pick. You've done your second, yeah.
I'm gonna go with another home team. Seattle is favored by 3.5 points at home against Carolina. I think Seattle is going to try to be keeping pace with San Francisco. Maybe they think that San Francisco is a little bit weaker with Garoppolo out, so they're going to need to keep pace with them to try to contend for the division and for their wild card spot they're barely holding on to right now. Yeah, I'm going to go Seattle -3.5.
Yeah, it's a long road trip for Carolina all the way across the country. PJ Walker is probably going to be quarterback, or Darnold maybe. Who knows?
Yeah.
I think Seattle.
The only thing we know is it's not Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, he went to the Rams. I think Seattle. Yeah, they really need this game, and I don't know how much Carolina is. They're gonna want to win, of course, but they're on autopilot. I think at this point, it's more about getting experience heading into next year and doing things like that. So, yeah, I think that's a plausible bet for sure. I'm also sticking with a West Coast home team for my third bet. This team, however, is an underdog. This is the Chargers at home against the Dolphins on Sunday Night Football. That was the game that replaced Broncos Chiefs Sunday night. It got when the Chiefs Broncos got flexed out.
Did you see there was a headline that that Russell Wilson is so bad that he flexed Mahomes out of the Sunday night game?
Yes, that's an impressive feat, I guess we could say.
Yeah.
So and the Dolphins lost fairly handily to San Francisco. They're going back across the country. I think the Chargers really need a win after losing to Raiders. They really want a playoff spot. This is a must-win game for them. It's not quite as must-win for Miami now, but I think just being a home team and I think they can at least cover, and probably I like them to win since it's 3 full points. It'd be nicer if it was 3.5 underdog, but I still like the Chargers here. I think if they lose here, I think their playoff chances are pretty much toast.
Yeah, especially with the Raiders seemingly moving up a bit too. Yeah,
we talked about the potential Raiders scenario, finishing 10-7.
Yeah, yep, it's still on the table.
Any other comments on week 14? Any other games look interesting, or do we want to? We've really talked a lot this
I think so.
episode. Yeah, I think there's some interesting games. I think it's interesting that the Vikings are road underdogs against the Lions. You know, some interesting
A team with
lines
a
there.
losing record. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the over-under is like relatively high too. It's 53.5 for that game too.
Yeah. Browns Bengals. I think it's a little surprising the Bengals are only 6-point favorites. You know, there's a lot of interesting things, but I'm not quite. You know, something seems off. So I don't. You know,
Yeah.
it feels like whatever I touch is not gonna turn to gold. So I'm just gonna go with these teams this year. We can talk about results of those games next week. Any parting thoughts, Dr. Scow?
I guess maybe some of the slate for this week is a little different because there are 6 teams on their bye this week, which is a little surprising anyway. That there's that many teams on the bye in a single week. Falcons, Bears, Packers, Colts, Saints, and Commanders all have bye weeks.
And the Commanders are the only ones that are sort of in playoff.
Right.
So most of the good teams are playing. But yeah, it'll be interesting, I think. The Ravens-Steelers matchup is always a tough one, and without Lamar Jackson, the Steelers are actually favored at home. A lot of divisional games. Just about every game. Other than there's a few. There's like a lot of like maybe half the games are divisional games at this point in the season. So
yeah,
it's a
and I think we picked only a couple of the division matchups anyway.
Chiefs Broncos I picked, and you picked
Buffalo Jets. Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
We'll see what happens. Good luck to everyone who's betting on the games, or whether it's for real or for fun. And until next week, I am Dr. Michael Werman. He is Dr. Andrew Scaff. We are the Warning Track Power Hour. Please like and or subscribe to our podcast and or YouTube channel. And like I said before, you never know what's going to happen on any given Sunday, but I hope your teams do well. Not no. Good day.
Flummoxed.
Flummoxed. I was vexed.